Hello and welcome to our roundtable with Brian, Teddy, and myself, Leah. Today we will take a deep dive into green energy startup races to try to understand what are the valuations, the risk, and what is the potential of this industry. We've seen that investors on equity crowdfunding market really backed CleanTech significantly in the last couple of months. And so we were wondering what actually are these companies in the clean tech space? And we realized it's a mix of clean transportation companies, which is kind of the industry that is booming right now. I think that in the last year, it was close to 100 million invested into that industry, but also the clean energy market. About $50 million were invested in that industry on equity crowdfunding platform. Same thing in the last year. So as we were kind of looking at, why is this actually booming? We realized there are a couple factors. First, it's just an industry that is booming overall because of a couple needs, right? The need for climate, the need to change the green to adapt to climate change. The need to have independent sources of energy in the United States and really start relying on foreign countries. And the need also for cheaper energy because solar, wind are right now some of the cheapest energy sources that we can find. And so this is a very, I want to say, kind of stable but growing industry that people can be investing in right now. So we were, as an investor, you want to look at several criteria when we invest in a company. And one of them is valuation. So how do you understand whether a company in the green energy sector is properly valued or not? Well, that's actually a very difficult question because only 36% of the green energy companies actually have revenues. And so it's very difficult for investors to understand, do they actually have to take revenue into consideration when they are looking at the valuation of a green tech company? And what we've discovered with that chart is that the couple companies that are fairly valued, that have like that low valuation to revenue multiple, meaning Neighborhood Sun, GoSun, and Infinity Fuel Cell Energy. Well, for Neighborhood Sun and GoSun, these are actually B2C companies, right? Companies that are in a space where there's so much competitor that they can't really they don't really have a technology that is that different. The technology is very replicable. For Infinity Full Cell, well, the reason why the multiple is low is simply because the company had a lot of grants from the government. It's about 7 million every year in grants. So it makes that they have a valuation to revenue multiple that is very fair. And then when you look at two other companies we have on this chart, meaning Emerging Fuels Technology and EarthGrid, these are part of the top five lowest valuation to revenue multiples, but they have multiples that are over 100 or 200x. And the reason for that is that these are not companies that are valued based on their revenues, but based on other factors. And I'm wondering, Brian, Teddy, when you look at these companies, how would you justify these high valuations? Why do they have valuations that are so high, and why is it still okay to invest in these companies?
Yeah, I think you've brought up a lot of really interesting points where there is kind of this division between there's the companies who have really attractive revenue multiples from one perspective, and then some of the ones that may look overvalued when you look at the revenue multiples. So, as with any startup, right, you need to take a look. One of the first things I'll look at as a personal investor is what was the actual revenue number, because sometimes it could be just a way that the revenue multiple is come up with, right? So you're kind of looking at the valuation divided by the revenue. If that denominator of the revenue is a pretty small number, maybe they're just recently generating revenue, maybe they got a couple grants and it's 50K or 100K, that might look like they're very, very overvalued, but they're really still kind of should maybe be treated as perhaps a pre-revenue company. So that's one of the most important things to first understand is don't just look at the raw number and say, oh, 100x, 200x, that sounds crazy. Maybe they should actually still being treated as a pre-revenue company. But Teddy, I'm curious about your thoughts. What do you think in terms of, a few things that you'll look at?
Especially with kind of emerging technologies, so companies in the energy space that are really trying to disrupt the status quo, you almost have to look at it as the entire upside is pretty much baked into the higher valuations. And, if they're, like Brian said, if they're just starting to generate revenue, or it's quite low, but the valuation is still really high, that doesn't necessarily mean the valuation is unfair. It could just mean the disruption they're seeking and the potential market that disruption will unlock could just be astronomical. So therefore, that you're considering a valuation that could seem very high due to the revenue multiple, but kind of have to take it the more holistic look with emerging technologies, especially in a space like this.
Yeah, I think that's another good point to segue in. It's not just all about the revenues for a lot of these companies. A lot of them are often going to be very capital intensive, will take very long times to kind of sell into a market. So the inherent value may be coming from the capital that's already been invested, the technology, if they have patents they've developed, maybe it's partnerships. And a lot of the times in this space, right, I think there's a lot of regulatory challenges. There can be. So just the knowledge and the headway and the progress they've made comes with value. Each of those things has a value in and of itself. It's not just about the raw revenue number. So, that's one of the tools in the toolbox, so to speak, that you look at, but you really got to look at it holistically. I know, Léa, you've taken a look at a lot of these companies as well. What do you think about when you're looking at them in terms of if they're fairly valued or not?
One of the things I look at is how much capital did they raise in the past. If you look at the example of EarthGrid, the company is valued at about $80 million, but they only made less than $400,000 in revenue in 2023. So that looks super overvalued if you look at valuation to revenue multiple. But actually, they already raised $50 million. So when you have a company that took $50 million from investors, you can't just value it at less than what it is, about 80 million. It just will be unfair to the previous investors. These investors also need to see the valuation growing. And another thing that I look at is how is the product actually differentiated? EarthGrid has already 80 patents. So that's a tremendous number. This has a lot of value as well if the company were to be acquired. And like Teddy was saying earlier, I look at the potential. What is the market that a company can tap into, and how much revenue can it generate in the next couple of years?
You also have to look at what is potentially de-risking an investment, especially in a emerging technology that could have huge disruption. So EarthGrid, for example, like has amazing potential. They also have an amazing founder with multiple exits. So like that's a de-risking factor when investing in startups, as that's one of the general predictors of future success potentially in startups, is that if they had prior success, kind of acts as a de-risk. But so that's some things I just kind of look for, factors that de-risk an investment, particularly in emerging technologies. And I see this in biopharma as well. If there's a drug that a company's bringing to market that has massive market potential, another big thing I look at is, okay, who's on their team? Do they have medical expertise, people with expertise in FDA clearances? Because that also serves, like I said, as a mitigant, a risk mitigant. So, yeah, just another factor to keep in mind.
Now, another important thing, right, when you're trying to consider valuations of companies, kind of your entry point as an investor to get in, is you got to be thinking about the potential exits. I'm curious, Léa and Teddy, how do you think about the long-term sort of investment potential around this industry? Are there certain trends today that are driving this, where even if some of these may look perhaps a little bit of a high valuation for a pre-revenue company, what's the long-term potential of this industry, and what are some of the drivers of that, you think, from growth? So I'll jump in with just one thing off the top of my head, and you two can think of some others. One of the things, Léa, you mentioned in the intro was talking about the increased need for energy, right? And I think one of the huge investment trends today that everyone's probably well aware of is AI, artificial intelligence, where a lot of these large language models and all of the training and machine learning that's going on has huge, huge energy demands. And so there's a lot of questions of where's that energy of the future, assuming we kind of continue on this trend of AI. Energy demands are going to be huge. And so how do we get affordable energy to be able to power all of these machine learning LLMs, these different models in the future? There's different types of renewable energy, obviously, and you could look at things like existing sources, things in uranium and nuclear energy and other stuff going on. But I think it's also pretty interesting when you just think about all the different startups that are out there that are trying to make different types of energy more affordable. So I'm kind of curious, what trends you two are seeing in that space.
One of the major trends that happened in the last 10 years, I want to say, is that the price of solar decreased tremendously. Like today, solar is the cheapest energy you can produce. And so when you think about data centers, these are companies that are operating these data centers. They definitely want to save as much as they can because energy is a huge expense for them. So if these companies can connect to solar farms, this is definitely something that they're going to favor over dirtier, more expensive industries. And I know that sometimes if you watch TV, you're going to think that green energy is kind of a political topic, whereas some people are for green energy, some people are against green energy. When I look at the data, that's not what I'm saying. Because at the end of the day, when you have a cheaper energy, this is something that everybody agrees on, whether it impacts climate change or not. And so I wouldn't look at politics in order for investors to know whether green energy is going to keep booming or not. I'm very confident. Even the states that are producing a lot of fossil fuels, like Texas, are massively investing into green energy because it creates jobs, because it is cheap, because it is affordable. Now, when you talk about exit opportunities, it really depends on the size of the company, the technology, but these companies are going into industries that are so massive that IPO is actually an option for some of these companies. Teddy, you were talking about Troy Helming, the founder of EarthGrid, who actually has 6 exits. Well, 2 of these are unicorns in the green energy market. So that shows us that reaching this high valuation that every investor would like to be able to hit at least once in their lifetime is possible in this market.
I'm not kind of an expert on this space, but kind of how I see green energy startups and innovative technologies is um, there was a quote that Elon Musk said. Obviously, I have issues with him, but on his entrepreneur side, he said he kind of thinks of the world in probabilities, and the reason he started Tesla and his solar companies, like the probability in his head of us running out of fossil fuels eventually is like 100%. Like it's a finite resource. The world will have to move towards renewables at some point or other types of green energy tech. So I just think it's here for the long term, and in addition to all the points Leia and Brian you just made of how, energy needs, resources, that's all going up. Public sentiment towards climate change has been shifting. Um, and, as more and more evidence comes out and as we start to see more, natural disasters occur and a lot of different things as a result of climate change, that's the public sentiment piece of it is not going to go away. And like I said, fossil fuels are a finite resource. So green energy tech, I think, is just always super exciting to move us away from fossil fuels and everything. So that's sort of how I look at it. Is that's the direction the world has to go. So
Those are a lot of great, drivers for positive reasons to invest. I'm curious, what do you two think in terms of risks when you're investing in green technology startups? What are some risks that you consider?
The first thing that I will look at is the competition. If you look at a company like Neighborhood Sun, which is doing community solar, it has many competitors, and some are bigger than Neighborhood Sun. And one of the reasons I still think Neighborhood Sun is an exciting investment opportunity is because it has the potential to be acquired by bigger players. But the truth is that it's in such a competitive market that this is a risk. Competitors may just be able to steal their customers without having to acquire them. That's a true risk for the company. Um, the second thing I will look at is also access to capital. Like you said earlier, Brian, a lot of these companies are capital intensive. And I believe that founders need a good network of VC investors with a solid product in order to get that capital. Founders not only are competing against other companies, but they're also competing against other founders raising money in the same state for VC dollars. Because yes, it's an industry that is very exciting on the equity crowdfunding market, but we know that at some point, once companies start needing more money than they can raise online, they have to go through institutional investors, and that's also a risk that we need to be very aware of.
Yeah, I think, like any startup, and in particular in industries like this, runway, burn, cash management, like all those things are just as they are in evaluating any startup, but in particular in highly capital intensive industries, particular, if they have a lot of hardware, a lot of capital expenditures, um, and weighing that against, a lot of these companies in this space, they have a lot of regulatory, hurdles to be navigating, which obviously costs a lot of money as well. So, like Léa was saying, like access to capital, how have they been able to raise in the past, and is there a clear kind of strategy and forecast of expenses that the company has presented that will get them to a commercialization or an acquisition or some sort of injection of capital. So that's sort of with technology like this, similar to biopharma, it's capital intensive, and in my mind, it's one of the most important things, yeah, to be looking at.
And there's one area of the green energy space that unfortunately we do not see enough on crowdfunding platforms. It's software related company. Because when we think energy, we think solar panel, we think wires, we think hardware, right? Which is extremely important. But there also are a lot of software companies. And these software companies, I think, it's also way easier for them to raise institutional capital because software is usually going to be more exciting. Why? Because it's less capital intensive. It can bring recurring revenue, and these are things that reassure investors. So that's why when I see a green energy software company like Neighborhood Sun that is raising online, I want to look at them. I want to know more about them because I know that recurring revenue in this space can be a strong generator of growth. And I really would love to see more community run of these startups that are, raising successfully through VCs, raising on ECF platform. We found recently had such a company like that was backed by a VC fund called Powerhouse, which is specializing in software green energy startups. And so we found as a platform that can sometimes bring this community runs for startups founder that are very successful raising money offline, but just want retail investors to success their deals. So that's something if you come across these companies, definitely take a look at them because they have a lot of potential.
Great. Well, I think we've covered a lot of great ground today, just talking about the investment potential of this industry, some of the key drivers in terms of looking for more affordable energy, clean energy, stuff getting us away from fossil fuels, but also, some of the risks in different areas that investors need to look at in terms of just being capital intensive, taking a long time, and competition. So thank you all for joining us. And I think we'll be back here for another one next week.